So I'd like to start by introducing you to our panellist that we have today, which is Nicole Winfield, and she is the Year 6 teacher and also the mathematics lead at Wyndham Primary Academy. She'll be speaking to us today about her experience so far in implementing math mastery at Wyndham and also sharing some of the resources that she's used and has found really valuable in that implementation process. So the structure of today's webinar is as follows. Nicole will be speaking for 20 minutes, perhaps a little bit longer today, and she has some slides set up and ready to go to share her experiences with you. At the end of this, we will be taking any questions. So you may notice that you'll be able to chat with me down the bottom of your screen. You can do it there. So any questions that you have throughout, feel free to message them through, or at the end of this webinar, I'll kind of touch base with every one of you. So any questions that you have, make note of them, and then we can discuss them with Nicole at the end of this session. And that's essentially it for our webinar this afternoon. So I am now going to hand over to Nicole, and she will start taking you through. Here you go, Nicole.
Thank you, Hannah. Just get my screen up. Can everybody see?
That's perfect.
Can we see that, Hannah? Yeah.
Lovely.
Fabulous. So, as Hannah said, I am Nicole. I'm a Year 6 teacher and the mathematics lead at Wyndham Primary Academy. And I'm here today to speak to you about our journey in implementing a whole school approach to teaching for mastery. I'm going to start by saying that teaching for mastery is a grey area, as there isn't a set model of how this looks in every school. And I think first you must appreciate that how this looks to us could be very different in your school, in your context. The only thing that I suppose we are agreed upon is that according to the NCETM, mastering maths is acquiring a deep, long-term, secure and adaptable understanding of maths. And based on this, we decided that we needed to implement an approach to help our teachers and our children in teaching for mastery. So I think it's best to start with an overview of our context at Wyndham. So we became a sponsored academy in 2012. We were the lowest or in the lowest 200 performing schools. Recently, we have been graded outstanding, and that was in May 2014. We currently have 434 children enrolled. That includes our nursery. We have 54% of our children receiving free school meals. 24% of our children are EAL, and that includes 27 different languages spoken. 33% of our pupils are from minority ethnic groups. We have 17% of our pupils with SEND. We have very low stability, around 70% mark, and the top 85th percentile for social deprivation on the indicator. And that data on our entry in FS1 shows that 90% of our children are working well below in communication and language. However, at the end of Key Stage 2, our progress data shows that we are in the top 6% nationally for reading and the top 12% nationally for maths. So obviously a lot of positive things have come over about the recent years, and it's just due to our desire to keep moving forward and learning, I suppose. And that's where this all started. So first, we had to bear in mind our context when we were looking at the research that was going to inform our idea. So I just want to take you through that, and I think this document perfectly summarises the essence of maths teaching for mastery. It's an NCETM document. It was published in June 2016. It's available on their website, but it just has a few ideas that informed our thinking. So firstly, we had to get all our teachers to understand that, or reject the idea that a large proportion of people just can't do maths, and that we need to encourage all of our children to believe that by working hard, they can succeed. And I suppose the whole idea of it is that all pupils are working together on the same lesson content at the same time, because this ensures that all children can master the concepts before moving on to the next part of the curriculum sequence. And it just means that no children are left behind or put in a different group, I suppose. And it's been really hard for our teachers to get on board with, which I will talk about, but we are definitely moving forwards in our thinking. So from our research, we picked out 4 key elements. These 4 key elements we believe a child must be secure with to have mastered a concept. So they have to be able to explain it, they have to be able to prove it, They have to be able to convince each other, and they have to be able to use it. But we didn't know what each of these entailed. So we knew that our target was to embed oracy across our curriculum because of our context. We have 90%, as I said, children coming into FS1 with speech and language difficulties. So we thought these masters classes could be a tool to get children to communicate with each other, to reason. And so we needed something to hook them in, and this was that. So we came up with some questions around each. These are accessible to the teachers, they're accessible to the children, so that they can become independent in challenging each other. So a child may ask their partner to explain their ideas to them. They may require a stronger level of reasoning, and may ask their partner why they are correct, but why their partner is incorrect. So it's getting children to see the misconceptions, digging a bit deeper. You may want a child to demonstrate that they can prove their answer independently. So it's not just about thinking about one method, it's about looking at it from multiple perspectives and thinking, well, if I can do it this way, how can I prove it independently without my teacher saying, yes, that is correct? And as you can see, we've got some of our children wearing our masters glasses. It was just a really quirky way of hooking them in, because they have to physically put the glasses on when they're explaining it to each other, when they're convincing. And it was trialled in my classroom first before it's rolled out across the whole school. And I must say the transformation was evident almost immediately. Children were independent in questioning each other. It wasn't that I had to say, oh, can you explain it to me? They were asking their partner to explain it to them. And so I had lots of tiny teachers around the room, and I felt that almost they were leading the learning and I could take a step back. I mean, their ability to communicate was developing. Even children with English as additional language were able to physically show their ideas using concrete manipulatives to prove their understanding. And the best one of all was the ability to convince each other. The fact that they can see each other's misconceptions and being able to draw them out and challenge their partner to say, I'm right because of this, and that's not quite right. And I think that was a big turning point for me. I suppose the missing ingredient was a tool to support teachers in understanding how to structure this within a maths lesson. So we had this idea of the masters classes, but how is our maths lesson going to look? And that's why we've used the Maths No Problem textbooks, because they're fantastic in that they follow a spiral approach, which allows children that don't grasp concepts quickly the chance to do so, and our rapid graspers or advanced learners that chance for enrichment, because their anchor tasks are really difficult to leave. So they have these anchor tasks called in-focus problems, real life problems, which allows time for children to grasp or find one method to solve that given problem, but it gives other children the opportunity to deepen and, I suppose, look at it from a variety of ways. So in a typical lesson, this is the Maths No Problem structure. As I've mentioned, it starts with an in-focus problem. This is one single problem, but where children will look at it from multiple perspectives. So like I say, it's about giving children time to do this, because it allows those struggling learners to find that one way of doing something that they can feel as if they've achieved and they are meeting the curriculum objective, they are secure with that. But your advanced learners is about getting them to look at it from multiple perspectives to see what their partner's done, why and how they've done it, and then being able to be critical of those methods and evaluate which methods are best and why. We then move on to Let's Learn, which is where the children, as I say, very much lead the learning. They are modelling their solutions to the given problem. They're at this point able to explain their ideas and convince each other as to why they're right but their partner's wrong. It then follows on to guided practice, which is just practice for consolidation and fluency. So they're given similar problems, they're slightly different each time because it's all about variation, not repetition. It's not about drilling. And finally, that independent application, given those 10 minutes, 15 minutes at the end where children are given the opportunity to apply their learning independently. So they're given their questions that follow that structured spiral approach. So how does this look in our classrooms now? So we've got the idea of the masters classes, we've got the Maths No Problem, how do we link it all together? So we've got children sat in mixed ability pairs. Reason being is Vygotsky says that children learn through social interaction. It's having that role model, working with a friend. So we say that the advanced learners, well, they're challenged because they have to explain it to their partner. they or often see an inverse correlation because they are able to compute, but this has an inverse correlation with the ability to explain. So explaining their ideas is often very difficult for them, especially in written form. That provides that avenue and that challenge for that. But the struggling learners are then given that model. They can see how their partner's done it and try and unpick it and see if it'll work for them. So it's a fantastic two-way system. We have toolboxes because, as Bruna says, the provision of concrete material during your initial learning develops the conceptual understanding. The idea of these toolboxes was that I knew as a maths lead that there wasn't a consistent use of resources across the whole school. What was being used in FS wasn't necessarily being used in year 6, and I wanted to change that. So these toolboxes are on every single table across the school. The idea is that they will use Numicon in FS, and they will continue to use Numicon up to year 6 to really get that rich conceptual understanding and encourage that. We also don't just use the book textbooks as they are. We bring the problems to life. We do a lot of our planning around a class book. So every half term we'll have a different class book. Year 6, last half term, we're doing A Midsummer Night's Dream, Shakespeare. And there were a lot of in-focus problems that lended themselves to that. So we just, I suppose, took the idea or the question and made it meaningful to the children by putting it in a different context, talking about the characters in A Midsummer Night's Dream instead of the characters in the problem. But if you don't plan around a class book, it's about how can I bring these problems to life? So looking at the problem is about donuts. Go out and get some donuts if you are able to and make it meaningful, or go to the shop. Last year I took my year 4 children to the shop. We were doing about the Vikings, and we went to buy food enough for a party, and it just made it meaningful, and the children then remembered that and held on to that, because it's not just about being secure at the point of teaching. That's superficial. It's about being able to revisit those concepts and make connections later on in the term or the year. That's really important. And again, just to touch on it, we always have those in-focus problems that are difficult to leave, and we give time. In Maths No Problem, there is no set time of you have to do this for 20 minutes, you have to do this for 10. I was lucky enough to go on a conference with Dr. Van Hayek, who was a key writer in the Maths No Problem textbooks, and he said or suggested that the in-focus problems you should spend as long as you need to. So sometimes I spend 20 minutes because that sufficed, but another time I spent the whole lesson because they were making so many connections, and the perspectives that they were looking at this problem from was just phenomenal, and it was necessary to allow them that time to do that, so that their learning was going to be meaningful and was going to be, they were going to be truly secure in their understanding. And as I put at the bottom, the National Centre for Excellence in the Teaching of Mathematics, that paper that I referred to at the beginning, those key ideas underpin the Maths No Problem, and those key ideas underpin our thinking in the classroom as well. The one thing that I'm going to talk about today is differentiation, because I know the idea that teaching for mastery doesn't have differentiation is being talked about a lot, and particularly by my members of staff, because they said that if there's no differentiation by task, there's no challenge, and they were definitely worried. But like the document that we referred to at the beginning says, the focus is on all pupils working together on the same lesson content at the same time, or relatively the same time. So how can we be differentiating? So we just had to change the way we thought about it. We first think about differentiation as differentiating our environment. This looks like, as you can see in the table, so our struggling learners, we create a safe environment for them where they can make mistakes and explore the problem. We give them choice. So we always accept their method, even if it is completely ludicrous and bonkers, but we don't shut them down. We say or believe that at some point in their learning journey, they will be critical of their methods. They will learn to evaluate their ideas. And we've just added another set of masters classes that is encouraging the children to evaluate it, because that's a task that children need to be able to do if they're aiming for the high standard or for greater depth. So it is the idea that eventually they will be critical of their methods. So allowing them to choose whatever they want to do, as long as it gets them to secure within that objective. And again, allowing them time to gain ownership without meddling. It's so hard as a teacher to watch somebody struggle through something, but if we stop them and we meddle, how are we creating independent learners? And I think that's the big question you need to ask yourself. It's really difficult, but you need to allow them that time so that you're encouraging their independent thinking. Otherwise, they'll get to a point like they are faced with SATs in year 6, and they won't be able to think for themselves. But for our advanced learners, it's about making the environment less safe. So rather than accepting their first answer, you respond by questioning. So you say, are you sure? Is that true for sure or for now? Or is it true for more cases? Seeing if they can generalise, because that's a really hard skill to grasp. And most importantly, you just need to challenge their thinking, because you need to remember that explaining ideas has that inverse correlation with the ability to compute. So for them, those skills that we have brought about using our masters classes, that we've made explicit through our use of masters classes, challenge their thinking, because they have to explain it to their partner. But not just that, they have to see where their partner's gone wrong, draw out the misconceptions, and being able to see it through their eyes. And that's, again, another important skill for him, being able to master a concept. We also, because as I was talking about with the glasses, we also, I suppose, pinpointed questions to each of them. Now, these questions that you can see on the slides, they are in the backs of all children's books. They are on display. The left image is a Key Stage 1 example, more accessible through the pictorial representations, and the image on the right, that is a Key Stage 2 example. But it just gives children that scaffold. So those children that will sit there and won't talk to each other when they're having to problem solve, they have these questions that can scaffold conversations. So they might just read, can you explain the problem to me? And that initiates a conversation. It starts them, the cogs turning and then thinking, the process happens. But then these natural steps to progress become more natural to them. They do. It's evident in the classroom, but it's just a way of making sure, I know I'm stumbling a bit over my words, but what I'm trying to say is teachers telling them we're going to teach for mastery is one thing. Doing a staff meeting saying, oh, we are going to introduce a teaching for mastery, that's great, and they may be on board with it, but how are we going to support them in doing that? And these masters classes was a fantastic way of supporting our teachers to do that. And obviously we have the Maths No Problem to support their structure in delivering the lessons. But if we didn't have that, I think, and we didn't have that approach, we wouldn't be in the same position we are now and having the same impact and the same outcomes for our children. So it's just something to bear in mind. So just looking at a typical lesson, this is one of my lesson plans. I draw out the Maths No Problem in focus and the guide of practice, because the questions are so carefully constructed. Why reinvent the wheel? Why do my own? Because guaranteed I won't be able to spiral my questions, and I need to be able to focus my attention on the questions and the misconceptions that may occur, as opposed to creating or spending hours creating these resources. They are ready made and they are brilliant. So we plan in, this is what time we spend, or where our time is best spent. We plan in questions. They are from the Maths No Problem online resource. We plan in what we are going to do to support our advanced learners in moving forward. And again, it's not moving them off the task. They need to be able to learn something meaningfully, and by pushing them onto an independent application or a guide of practice too soon, that stops them learning that concept meaningfully. Because as I say, in the lesson, they may appear that they have grasped it, but are they truly secure, or is that learning superficial? You won't know until you revisit that concept a few months down the line, or even next year. It's about keeping them all at the same time, learning the things at the same time, but allowing them the opportunities to see it from multiple perspectives, and that's what we plan for. So you will still get the children saying, I've finished initially. I mean, our children are much better with this because they are, I suppose their mindset has been retrained, and they now see that they are never truly finished because they've never finished demonstrating their understanding. But in case that happens, we created this poster from my meeting with Dr. Van Hoyek, and I have used it and proved it. So you've applied your learning and you've proved it using multiple methods or representations. Now can you do this? So can you invent a new method and name it after yourself? That's really, really nice one for calculations. A year 5 child bought me a method that they'd invented, and it was something that I would have never come up with myself. It was fantastic. Pick my favourite calculation and write a story for it. So being able to write different stories is always fantastic. That shows understanding. Write a note in my book to help someone else understand what I've learned, because this skill's really hard. They may be able to explain it verbally, but being able to explain it in written form is a completely different ball game, and they sometimes struggle with this. And being able to carry out research to answer a teacher's challenging question, and this might be a really open-ended question. NCA ETM resources for this are fantastic, with the greater depth questions for mastery, hitting the mastery. So sorry, I'm getting a bit mixed with my words. So then I think the last thing to touch on is that we can say we are differentiating, but there will still be teachers who will come back to you and say, but my advanced learners have got it, like they need to be doing something else. It's a waste of time them doing this. But I think the issue with those teachers is that they can't categorise those truly advanced learners. So I've come up with a set of criteria for what an advanced learner looks like. They're always able to give you a physical model, so they can add a story rather than just saying 8 times 3 is 24, being able to give a story to that. So you've got 8 children, they have 3 sweets each. How many sweets are there altogether? They're always able to give you a visual model, so they can give you a picture of a bar model, for example, to represent the problem. They have the ability to explain themselves orally. They can think on the spot, but they also have their ability to explain themselves in written form, and that's the difference you'll see in my books. My learners that are secure but struggling with concepts will have one way of doing things. My advanced learners will have lots of different ways of doing things, and they'll be writing how the process they took to get to their answer as well. And they are able to challenge themselves. And I think our masters classes allow for that, because they make those natural next steps for progression explicit to them. I think that the last thing to touch on, and I know I'm running out of time, is our struggling learners, because I think they get forgotten about with this approach. But these are the children that will emerge within a lesson as they're not yet secure, because they can't complete that final task on their own. So revisiting this idea of differentiating our environment, but also being able to have the confidence to convert that last independent application to a guided practice where the teacher can lead them through the activity and scaffold them. They might break the task down into smaller steps so they can develop those sub-skills required to complete that independent application. And again, another method of doing this, which a lot of schools have done so well, is intervention. And at the moment, we are doing maths in the morning, and we are delivering interventions in the afternoon, and we have specialist pre and post teachers that do that. But we are trialling at the moment a method of teaching maths, the in focus and the guided practice, in our assembly break in the middle, delivering the intervention so it is immediate, and then following that up with independent application afterwards, so that all children are able to progress to the independent application. And again, as I've put in the bottom, the National Centre for Excellence in the Teaching of Mathematics has also outlined that if a pupil fails to grasp a concept or procedure, this is quickly identified and picked up through intervention. So everything that we do is underpinned by this document. I do apologise for a few tripping over my word a few times, but I think now is a key opportunity to discuss anything that you feel I haven't touched on over the 20 minutes, because it was very much a whistle-stop tour. Anything you'd like me to explain further, or any questions that you have about anything in general.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Nicole. This is Hannah speaking at the moment. I just wanted to say I always find it really interesting when visiting Wyndham. Obviously, your use of the master's glasses is brilliant and it feeds so well into the levels of questioning. And also, I think something that I took out of this was also your view on differentiation and your challenge with that. So thank you very much. What I am going to do now is just go around. I can see that Gillian has a question for us. Currently, our participants are on mute at the moment, so I'm just going to go through and unmute them one by one. So Gillian, are you there at the moment?
Yes, I am, yeah.
Hi, Gillian. I've just got your question here. I'll read it out, but then I might get you to expand on it as well. So it just says, what happens when you have children in your class who are really SEN, who are at least 1 year group below?
Okay, so we have at the moment, because we have children with quite severe SEND needs, we have a jigsaw provision, and all this means is for the time being they focus on ideas surrounding number, because obviously this is a core skill that they need to take on with them into the outside world. So they have this jigsaw provision every morning, so instead of attending maths in their class, they will attend maths in there. And I'm talking about children, for example, in year 4 that are still working at year 1 objectives. For the time being, that is our solution. I know this isn't always doable in all schools, and the thing you have to appreciate is that this is a process, and it will not happen overnight. So there are things that we need to iron out. We need to iron out these gaps at the moment. And we can't do that overnight. We can't bring these children that have been accessing Jigsaw straight back into class. That is the aim. The aim is that in the next few years, all of our children will be back in class. But it's through, as I say, the way the lessons are structured. In that, an in-focus problem, for example, it may be focused at a year 4 objective, but that in-focus task can then be split up into sub-skills that they require to meet that year 4 objective. And those sub-skills may come from year 1 objectives, year 2 objectives, year 3 objectives. So it's about planning for that, not planning them separate tasks, but planning in the sub-skills that they will need to get a solution to that problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's brilliant. It's kind of what we're doing now. We use concrete, pictorial and abstract, and we're just at the point of deciding how to move forward. But we do have children. I have 2 children in year 5 who are currently working within the year 2 objective. So yeah, we don't have, well, we could remove them, but we do what you've just suggested, which is breaking it down into the skills and then building it back up for them, so that they're working really within year 3 at work. But no, that's fine. That is kind of what we're doing now.
Yeah, that sounds good. It's like you say, about keeping them all together on the same task and allowing everyone to access that by planning in the sub-skills that they will need to develop. So we do this on something called tools. So we have tools for each lesson or for each independent work, and it's steps to almost get to that year group objective. And it may be a step taken from the year 1 curriculum that links into the step taken from the year 2. Then the year 3, then the year 4, just to allow them the opportunity to see those steps and how they're going to get there to access that year 4 curriculum objective.
Yeah, well, we use Chris Quigley's Pebbles, and that has a very similar concept, and it helps, particularly at our NQTs, it helps them to see the steps up to that skill. So yeah, that's fine. That's what we're doing. So it's a really impressive webinar.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you. It's my first time, so I've been a bit bleh.
You've been super.
You've been absolutely amazing, Nicole. What I might do, thank you for that question, Gillian. I'm just going to go through and unmute some of our participants and ask them if they have questions as well. So I'm looking at Kathy at the moment. Did you have any questions for Nicole, Kathy? I'm going to assume that's a no, or perhaps her microphone isn't working. Anne, I can see you here. Did you have any questions for Nicole this evening, Anne? Not at the minute, no problem. And our final one, Anna. Hello, Anna. Did you have any questions for Nicole this evening? No, I think we're all good. Nicole, thank you so much for presenting. Do you have any closing comments or anything else that you would like to add on to?
No, not at all. Thank you for the opportunity in sharing our approach. And just remember, the thing that I have stressed throughout this is that it is a process. It's not going to happen overnight, and that you have got to see the journey that you are on. And we are by no means at the end of our journey. We are still learning as we go and tweaking things each year so that we can get more children on the bus to be secure in their year group's objectives.
Brilliant. Lovely. What I might do now, Nicole, is I'm just going to flash back to my screen really quickly, just to bring up a few events that we have coming up in our whole education network. So as you're all familiar, we do have our webinars that we run quite frequently. On Tuesday the 16th of May, we're having a whole day at the Spinney Primary School, and we're focusing on creativity and the big curriculum and what that looks like there. And then on Tuesday the 13th of June, we're going to be having a twilight practice sharing session at Sandringham Primary School, so in our London community. What I will do is Nicole has given me permission to share this webinar, so this will be going up on our whole education YouTube channel. I will also, she's also been so kind to share her slides with us this evening, so I will put an email together out in the next few days and send that out to everybody so as you will have access to them. I can just see here that Anna has her hand raised. So I'll just pop back to Anna. Sorry. Hi, Anna. Did you have a question for us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, just.
Hi, yes. Thanks for the webinar. It was great. We're just wondering, how do you approach the concept of maths in the early years?
Okay. One of our NQTs has been looking into this year, because last year when we first started trying to implement an approach, we first started with year 1 to year 6 as recommended by Maths No Problem. But with FS, they have basically taken the ideas from the year 1 and the ideas that we are using throughout the school, and they are trying to implement that at the moment into FS. So they are using things such as the master's classes, because again, it's making the skills that a child needs to demonstrate in order to master a concept explicit to them. So they are explaining classes, explaining their ideas, and they are proving it using the prove-it classes. So, for example, in our nursery, they look at the numeral 2, but they have to prove that it understands the number, and they can see the number behind the numeral. So they might use concrete manipulatives to show that, and a variety of those. And I suppose it is just taking ideas from what the whole school is doing and trying to bring them to life in FS. They're even in FS2 at the moment just starting to implement the in-focus problem, the idea of the in-focus problem as well, planning around the problem or introducing a problem to the whole class, letting them go and use whatever they want to solve the problem, being able to come back and discuss what they have done. It's just a great way of introducing it early on, so that they're then able to apply those skills throughout the school.
Right, great, thanks for that. Just a quick one as well while I'm on. And how many pairs of the glasses do you have generally in each class? Is it just the concept?
How many sets of them? Yeah, so we have one set per table. So we have an explain it, prove it, convince me, use it, and we have now an evaluate it per table. So the children can just pick them up when they are responding to a question, either pitched by the teacher or by somebody else in the class, and put them on when they're answering that question.
Right, that's great. Thank you for that.
Yeah, they're really cheap as well. We got our glasses off Amazon for a really cheap cost, because, I mean, that's something that meant that we could roll it out across the whole school. So they're just plastic glasses, and as long as the children look after them, they'll be fine.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for presenting this evening, Nicole. I'm going to end our webinar now. Thank you everybody who came along and attended, and I will be sure to email you when we have this up on YouTube. Enjoy your evening. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.